When Uche first saw Amarachi, she was standing by a dusty roadside in Nsukka, trying to sell roasted corn to passing motorists. Her tray was old and slightly cracked, her wrapper faded, yet something about her calm face and quiet dignity made her unforgettable. Uche had driven past her many times before, but that day, he stopped. He was a man people respected for his wealth and confidence. He owned a logistics company in Enugu and was known for his sharp dressing and serious looks. But beneath that, he was dealing with a problem that no amount of money could easily fix. His mother, Madame Ego, had been pressuring him to get married before the year ended. The woman had even gone as far as inviting pastors and prophets to pray for him to find a wife. Uche didn't have the patience for all that. That was when his friend, a booker, jokingly said something that sparked an idea. "Guy, if you can't find wife, pay one fine girl to pretend. After all, your mother just wants to see a woman beside you." It sounded crazy, but Uche couldn't stop thinking about it. Days passed, and every time he drove past Amarachi's spot, her humble posture and soft eyes stayed in his mind. She was nothing like the city women he knew. No wigs, no heavy makeup, no loud voice, just simplicity and peace. One hot afternoon, he finally pulled over. Amarachi looked up, surprised when his tinted window rolled down. "Good afternoon, sir," she said politely, adjusting her tray. "Good afternoon," he replied. "What's your name?" "Amarachi." He nodded slowly. "You're not from around here, are you?" "I came from Orlu," she said. "I'm staying with my aunt, but I sell here to support myself." Uche studied her for a moment before saying, "I have a proposal. Not the kind you might think, so don't be afraid. I'll pay you to act as my wife for a short time." Amarachi blinked, unsure she heard him correctly. "Your wife?" "Yes. Just pretend. I'll take care of you. You won't have to sell again until the arrangement is over." She hesitated, looking both confused and suspicious. "Why me?" He smiled faintly. "Because you look real. You don't look like someone pretending." That evening, she couldn't sleep. She lived in a single room behind her aunt's compound, where the ceiling leaked when it rained. The idea of pretending to be someone's wife felt strange, yet she couldn't ignore the way Uche spoke, calm, firm, and honest. She had seen many men approach her for wrong reasons, but his eyes carried no mischief. 2 days later, she agreed. Uche drove her to Enugu, bought her new clothes, and even hired someone to teach her table manners and a bit of English refinement. It felt like a dream. She couldn't recognize the reflection in the mirror anymore. When they arrived at his mother's mansion for the first time, Madame Ego's eyes nearly fell out. "Chinik, Uche, you didn't even tell me," she screamed, rushing to hug Amarachi. "My daughter-in-law." Amarachi forced a shy smile, greeting her respectfully. The house smelled of polished wood and pepper soup. Madame Ego was overwhelmed with joy, calling neighbors and even planning a small celebration for the following weekend. As days passed, Amarachi began to notice things about Uche she hadn't seen before. Behind his serious nature, there was a man who laughed softly when she told simple stories, who remembered small details like how she liked her tea not too hot, who would sometimes watch her quietly when she wasn't looking. But she also noticed the sadness he tried to hide. Late at night, when he thought she was asleep, he would sit by the window, scrolling through old pictures on his phone, pictures of another woman. One night, she asked, "That woman, who is she?" He looked startled but then sighed. "Her name was Adiz. She left me 2 years ago. Said I was too focused on work and not ready for a real home." Amarachi didn't say anything, but in her heart, she began to feel something she couldn't explain. This arrangement was supposed to be fake, yet her heart was beginning to take it seriously. Madame Ego loved her dearly. She'd tell everyone how respectful and humble her new daughter-in-law was. But Amarachi couldn't stop feeling like she was living a borrowed life. Every time Uche called her my wife, her heart would skip, but she knew it wasn't real. Still, one evening changed everything. They attended a family event together. Amarachi wore a simple gown Uche had bought her. When they arrived, people whispered, admiring her grace. During dinner, one of Uche's ex-girlfriends, a proud woman named Chidinma, walked up to their table. "So this is your wife?" Chidinma said with a sly smile. "She doesn't even look like she knows which fork to use." Amarachi's hands trembled slightly, but before she could say a word, Uche held her hand under the table. His voice was calm but sharp. "Chidinma, you're right. She may not know which fork to use, but she knows what respect means, something money can't buy." Chidinma walked away embarrassed. Amarachi sat quietly, her chest warm with a strange feeling she hadn't known before, pride. That night, as they returned home, Uche said softly, "You handled yourself well. I'm proud of you." For the first time, she looked into his eyes and saw no trace of pretense. And in that silent gaze, something shifted. Neither of them spoke, but both felt it. The lie that brought them together was slowly turning into something real, something neither of them planned for. The morning after the family event, the house felt different. Amarachi woke up earlier than usual, her heart still replaying Uche's words from the night before, "I'm proud of you." They sounded simple, but they lingered in her ears like music. She wasn't used to anyone defending her, not to talk of a man as respected as Uche. She went to the kitchen to make breakfast. The housekeeper offered to help, but Amarachi smiled and shook her head. "Let me do it myself. He likes it when I cook," she said softly, realizing the truth in her own words only after saying them. Uche came down the stairs a few minutes later, his shirt half-buttoned, still adjusting his wristwatch. The smell of fried plantain and eggs filled the house. He paused by the dining table and smiled when he saw her. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I wanted to," she replied without looking up. They ate quietly at first, just the clinking of spoons and the chirping of birds outside. Then Uche leaned back, watching her. "You've changed this house," he said. "It used to feel empty, but now, when I come home, it feels alive." Amarachi tried not to smile, but the corners of her lips betrayed her. "Maybe it's your mother's prayers," she teased. He laughed, shaking his head. "Maybe it's something else." From that morning, their arrangement began to take a different shape. What started as a simple act now carried emotions neither of them could ignore. They talked more, laughed more, and slowly learned each other's small habits, how Uche liked to read before bed, how Amarachi hummed quietly while cleaning, how she smiled when she forgot he was watching. But while love quietly grew in their hearts, danger grew outside. Madame Ego's joy had spread across the neighborhood, and soon, everyone wanted to see the perfect couple. Words traveled fast, and so did envy. One afternoon, Uche returned home from work to find his mother pacing the living room, phone in hand, her face tight with anger. "Uche, is it true?" she shouted. He frowned. "What's true?" "That girl, Amarachi. Someone said she used to sell by the roadside. That she's not from a good family." Uche froze. He didn't expect the truth to come out so soon. Madame Ego's voice shook with disappointment. "Why would you hide this from me? How could you bring someone like that into this family?" Before Uche could reply, Amarachi walked in quietly, holding a basket of vegetables. She stopped when she saw the tension. "Mama, good afternoon," she greeted, her voice trembling. Madame Ego turned sharply. "Don't call me Mama. Tell me, is it true? Were you selling by the road before my son found you?" Amarachi swallowed hard, her eyes wet. "Yes, Ma. I was selling corn." The silence that followed was heavy. Madame Ego pressed her hand to her chest and sighed deeply. "Chinik, what kind of disgrace is this? Uche, is this your wife material?" Uche's voice was calm but firm. "Mama, I don't care about her past. She's decent and kind. That's all that matters." His mother turned to him, shocked. "So you'll choose her over your family's honor?" "I'm choosing peace," he said quietly. "And I won't let anyone talk down on her again." Amarachi stood there, tears falling, feeling both ashamed and grateful. Later that night, when the house was quiet, she packed her things. She couldn't stand the thought of being the reason for conflict between Uche and his mother. But as she was about to leave, Uche stepped into the doorway. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice low. She froze. "I can't stay here, Uche. Your mother doesn't want me around. I don't want to bring trouble." He moved closer. "You think leaving will solve anything? Amarachi, listen to me. You didn't do anything wrong. I started this mess, not you." "It wasn't a mess," she whispered. "It was a miracle for me. But I can't keep pretending. I know this isn't real." Uche sighed. "What if it is now?" She looked up sharply. "What are you saying?" "I don't know when it happened," he said softly, "but I stopped seeing this as a deal. I started seeing you. The way you smile, the way you speak with respect, the way you make me feel calm. Amarachi, I don't want this to end." Her heart thudded, tears flowing freely now. "Don't say that if you don't mean it." "I mean every word," he said. "I'll handle my mother. You're not going anywhere." The next morning, Uche surprised everyone. He took Amarachi to his office, introduced her to his staff, and told them she was his wife. Some looked shocked, others smiled politely. But Uche didn't care. He was done hiding. Back home, Madame Ego refused to speak to them for days. The silence in the house was thick, but Uche stood his ground. Amarachi kept being respectful, greeting her mother-in-law every morning, cooking for her even when she wouldn't eat. Slowly, Madame Ego's anger began to melt. One evening, she called Amarachi to her room. "Sit down," she said coldly. Amarachi obeyed, her hands trembling. Madame Ego looked at her for a long time before saying, "You remind me of myself when I first married Uche's father. People looked down on me too. But I proved them wrong. If you truly love my son, show me you can stand with him through anything." Amarachi nodded with tears in her eyes. "I will, Ma. I promise." From that day, peace returned to the house. Weeks turned into months. Their fake marriage had now become something the entire neighborhood admired. People spoke about how humble Amarachi was, how her respect made Uche a better man. And though she still carried the memory of where she came from, she walked with quiet confidence. But love, no matter how pure, always meets a test. One evening, a car stopped in front of their gate. A tall woman stepped out, carrying herself like she owned the ground she walked on. It was Adiz, Uche's ex. When she entered the living room, Uche was startled. "Adiz, what are you doing here?" She smiled sweetly. "I came to see what I lost. I heard you're married now." Her eyes turned to Amarachi, who had just come from the kitchen, wiping her hands with a towel. "So this is the wife?" Uche stiffened. "Yes, this is Amarachi." Adiz laughed lightly. "You've changed, Uche. You used to like polished women, not this." Amarachi stood quietly, her chest burning, but she didn't respond. Uche's voice came cold. "Adiz, you left me. You made your choice. Don't insult my wife." She smirked. "Your wife. You and I both know how this started." Amarachi's eyes widened slightly, but Uche spoke before she could. "That's enough. Whatever this was, it's over. Leave my house." Adiz stared at him, shocked. "You're throwing me out because of her?" "Yes," he said firmly. "Because she's not pretending anymore, and neither am I." Adiz's face hardened. "You'll regret this," she hissed, then turned and stormed out. Amarachi stood frozen, her heart pounding. "She knows," she said quietly. "She knows this started as a lie." Uche looked at her, pain in his eyes. "I'll tell you everything. I should have told you sooner." He sat her down and confessed how the whole thing began as a plan to please his mother, how he never intended to deceive her but didn't know how to stop once feelings got involved. Amarachi listened silently, her face unreadable. When he finished, she stood up slowly. "I knew something wasn't right, but I wanted to believe you. I wanted to believe this was real. It is real, he said desperately. Please don't leave me. She turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. I need time, Uche. You bought me clothes, you gave me a home, but I gave you my heart without price. Then she walked away, leaving him standing in the silence of the room, realizing for the first time that love cannot be bought, it must be earned. And for the first time since the charade began, Uche understood what true begging felt like, not for forgiveness, but for love. Amarachi didn't go far that night. She left the mansion with only a small bag, her heart heavy and confused. She walked until her slippers gathered dust, her eyes burning but refusing to cry anymore. She found a small guest house by the roadside, paid for a single room, and sat by the small window watching cars pass. The night was quiet, but her mind was loud. Every word Uche said replayed again and again. It started as a plan to please my mother. Those words pierced deeper than she wanted to admit. She wasn't angry because he lied, she was hurt because she had truly believed in him. Meanwhile, Uche stayed awake on the couch. He didn't touch his food or answer calls from friends. His mother came out around midnight, her wrapper tied tightly around her chest. Uche, what happened? I saw her leaving. Did you chase her? He looked up, his face pale. No, Mama. I broke her heart. Madame Ego frowned. What do you mean? He told her everything. The deal. The payment. The pretense that turned real. She sat in silence, staring at him. Uche, she said softly, you used your head when you should have used your heart. You don't buy love, you build it. He nodded slowly, his eyes red. I know, Mama. I'll make it right. But making it right wasn't as easy as he thought. Days passed. Amarachi didn't return his calls. Her phone rang and rang, unanswered. He went to the roadside where she used to sell, hoping maybe she went back there. The spot was empty, just a patch of earth and an old stone. He sat there for a while, lost in thought. Then he remembered something, her aunt in Orlu. He drove there early the next morning, through winding roads and dusty paths. When he reached the compound, an older woman came out, wiping her hands on her wrapper. Good morning, Ma, Uche said respectfully. I'm looking for Amarachi. The woman eyed him curiously. You're the one she worked for, ABI? He hesitated. Something like that. Please, I just want to talk to her. The woman sighed. She left 2 days ago. Said she needed to find peace. She didn't say where. He stood there helplessly. Did she say anything about me? She only said you're a good man who made a bad choice. Those words haunted him all the way back to Enugu. That evening, he sat by his desk at work, staring at a photo of her on his phone. She was laughing in it, one of those rare moments he caught her unguarded. He realized then that his life had grown too quiet without her voice. He couldn't even enjoy success anymore. His house, his cars, his company, everything felt hollow. Abuka, his friend, walked in unannounced. Guy, you look finished. What's going on? Uche rubbed his face. Amarachi left. Abuka whistled. Omo. The one you paid to act as your wife? Yes. And now you're acting like you lost your real wife. Uche gave him a long, cold stare. Because I did. Abuka chuckled nervously. You're serious? I am. Abuka sighed and sat down. Then go after her properly this time. No games. No pride. Tell her everything. Women can smell insincerity from a mile away. That night, Uche sat in his car for hours, thinking. Then he opened his laptop and began typing something, a long letter. Not a message, not a call. A letter that said everything he hadn't been brave enough to say. He printed it, sealed it, and drove to Orlu again at dawn. He gave it to Amarachi's aunt with trembling hands. Please, if she comes back, give this to her. Days turned into a week, then 2. No word from her. He started to think he'd lost her for good. Then one rainy afternoon, he got a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was soft. It's me. His breath caught. Amarachi? Yes. He didn't know what to say. Where are you? Please, I need to see you. There was silence for a moment, then she said, I read your letter. He swallowed hard. And? I believe you, she said quietly, but believing doesn't mean forgetting. You hurt me, Uche. I know, he said. Tell me what to do to fix it. Anything. She took a long breath. If I come back, it won't be as your pretend wife. I'll come back only if it's real. His voice shook slightly. It's real. It's been real for a long time. They met the next day at a small restaurant in Orlu. Amarachi came wearing a simple blue gown, her hair tied neatly. When Uche saw her, he stood immediately, almost afraid she would disappear if he blinked. He tried to speak, but words failed him. She sat down quietly, looking calm but guarded. I thought you'd never forgive me, he said. I didn't say I forgave you yet, she replied. But I'm here, so that's something. He smiled faintly. That's everything. They talked for hours. About how the lie began, about the fear that kept him from being honest, about the love that grew unexpectedly between them. For the first time, Uche didn't hide behind confidence or pride. He spoke from his heart. When they stepped outside, the rain had stopped, and the air smelled clean. He looked at her and said softly, I don't want to ask you to come back as part of a plan. I want to ask you to come back as my wife, truly. Amarachi looked away, her eyes moist. You're asking me to trust you again. I'm asking you to let me earn it, he said. That night, she didn't give him an answer. She returned to her aunt's house and lay awake thinking. Her heart fought with her mind. He had hurt her, yes, but he had also defended her, respected her, and seen her worth when others didn't. The next morning, she packed her bag again. Not because she was running, but because she was ready. When Uche opened his door and saw her standing there, his heart almost stopped. She held her bag tightly, her eyes steady. I came to finish what we started, she said quietly. He smiled with relief and emotion flooding his face. You don't know how long I've waited to hear that. I'm not the same girl you met by the roadside, she said. If we're doing this, it must be honest. No pretending. No secrets. He nodded. No more pretending. From that day, their story began again, but differently. Uche didn't hide her past anymore, he celebrated it. He told people proudly that his wife used to sell roasted corn, and that her hard work humbled him. Madame Ego, who once resisted her, now defended her fiercely. Amarachi opened a small food business in town, something she had always dreamed of. Uche helped her set it up but let her run it her own way. Soon, the same people who once whispered behind her back now came to buy from her, praising her meals and her kindness. One evening, while she was closing her shop, Uche arrived quietly and leaned on the doorway. She smiled when she saw him. You came early today. I missed you, he said, walking closer. Besides, I wanted to remind you that tomorrow makes 1 year since the day I met you. She laughed softly. That's true. You stopped to buy corn and ended up buying trouble. He grinned. The sweetest trouble of my life. They stood there for a while, just looking at each other, the kind of silence that didn't need words. It wasn't the fake peace of their first days together, it was real, earned, and strong. As they walked home hand in hand, Uche knew one thing clearly. He didn't just pay a girl to pretend, he found a woman who taught him what love truly meant, to cherish, not to own, to give, not to buy. And though the journey had begun with lies, it was ending in truth. But fate had one last twist waiting for them, something that would test just how deep their love had truly grown. Days passed in a rhythm that felt almost dreamlike. Amarachi woke early every morning to open her small food business, greeted by the smell of fresh yam and pepper soup wafting from the neighboring stalls. Uche accompanied her sometimes, not because she needed protection or assistance, but because he simply wanted to watch her move through the world with confidence. There was a joy in observing her laugh at a clumsy customer or offer a free sachet of palm oil to a struggling neighbor that money could never buy. But their peace, as perfect as it seemed, had a quiet tension beneath it. Amarachi had made it clear that forgiveness was a process, and Uche understood that every smile he received from her came with conditions. He could no longer rely on charm or wealth to sway her. Each day, he had to earn her trust anew, proving he could be the man who deserved her heart. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills of Nsukka, they walked home from the market together. Uche carried a small basket of yams while Amarachi balanced a bag of spices on her shoulder. The streets were quiet, littered with stray leaves and dust kicked up from passing motorcycles. She glanced at him, her hair damp from the humid evening air, and said, "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" "All the time," he replied, gripping the basket tighter. "Sometimes I still can't believe you agreed to come back. I thought I'd lost you for good." She smiled softly, but there was a weight in her gaze. "You hurt me deeply, Uche. And while I'm here, part of me still wonders if this is real or if I'm setting myself up for disappointment again." He stopped walking, looking directly at her. "I know. And I can't erase the past. But I can spend the rest of my life proving that I mean every word, every promise, every step I take with you." For a moment, Amarachi felt a surge of warmth in her chest. The sincerity in his voice was undeniable. But just as quickly, reality crept back. Their journey together had been built on lies once before. Could she fully trust a love that began with deception? The next week, a challenge came unexpectedly. A new competitor opened a food stall near Amarachi's shop, selling similar meals at lower prices. He was aggressive, loud, and even had the audacity to spread rumors about her, claiming her food was stale and her ingredients substandard. Customers hesitated, some even leaving her stall without buying anything. Amarachi's hands trembled as she cleaned tables, her stomach twisting with anxiety. She had worked so hard to create her little space, and now it seemed like it could crumble in a single day. Uche appeared quietly behind her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Don't let him shake you," he said. "Your food speaks for itself. People come here for your care, not just your dishes." "I know," she replied, "but people are listening to lies. How can I fight them?" He leaned closer, his voice low but steady. "Together. I'll help you, and we'll make sure everyone knows the truth. But you have to promise me something, you have to keep being you. Don't let his noise change your heart or your work." That afternoon, they strategized. Uche helped her hire 2 young assistants and set up a small delivery route, reaching customers who couldn't easily come to the market. They advertised on small local boards, emphasizing her story, her commitment, and her unmatched care in preparing every meal. Slowly, word spread. The people who had been swayed by rumors returned, and new customers arrived, curious to try the meals praised by everyone who had trusted her. Through the week, Amarachi noticed something she hadn't expected. Uche was always there. Not hovering, not controlling, but present. He carried sacks of ingredients when they were heavy, helped her clean when the assistants were busy, and even stayed late at night to tally accounts and calculate supplies. He wasn't just a husband in name, he was a partner in every sense of the word. Then, one evening, while closing the shop, a heavy rain began. Amarachi was about to run inside when Uche stopped her. "Wait," he said. "Let's just stand here for a moment." She frowned but obeyed, feeling raindrops soak her hair and clothes. The rain was warm, almost soothing. Uche took her hand, holding it as the water dripped between their fingers. "I don't ever want to take this for granted," he said, his voice barely audible over the patter. "I nearly lost the one person who made me want to live differently, to be better. I can't do that again." Amarachi looked at him, her heart caught between caution and longing. "It's not easy to forgive," she whispered. "I know," he said, "and I'll wait. I'll wait as long as I need to, but I won't stop showing you that you're the only one I want." The rain soaked them both, but neither moved. It was a silence that didn't need words, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond forming between them, fragile yet undeniable. Days later, a letter arrived, hand-delivered by a young boy running through the streets. Amarachi opened it with shaking hands. The letter was simple, a confession from Adiz, Uche's ex. She admitted that she regretted leaving him and had been watching from a distance, realizing she had lost something she could never regain. Amarachi's hands trembled as she showed the letter to Uche. He read it carefully, then folded it and put it in his pocket. She had her chance, he said quietly. This is our life now, Amarachi. Not hers, not anyone else's. Ours. The days grew busier as Amarachi's business expanded. She began employing women from her neighborhood who had no work, giving them a small wage and teaching them the skills she had learned. Uche watched with admiration, realizing that the woman he once thought of as fragile and quiet was now a force of care, resilience, and leadership. One evening, after a long day of cooking and deliveries, they returned to the mansion. Madame Ego was waiting, her expression unreadable. She had been watching her son and Amarachi, noting the way he treated her, the way she carried herself, the way their bond deepened. "You've both changed," she said finally, her voice soft. "I see now why you couldn't be apart. Amarachi, you've earned your place in this family. Not because of wealth, not because of status, but because of your heart." Amarachi's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Ma. That means more than anything." Uche squeezed her hand, feeling her warmth and the weight of the journey they had taken together. "I told you I'd earn it," he said softly. But just as life seemed to settle into a rhythm of trust, love, and shared dreams, an unexpected letter arrived. This one was from a government office, addressed to Uche's logistics company. The words on the page sent a chill through him. An inspection was scheduled immediately, one that could shut down the business if discrepancies were found. Uche read the letter to Amarachi that night, his voice tight. "I thought we had time to enjoy this peace, but it seems there's another challenge waiting." She looked at him, steadying herself. "We'll face it together. Like everything else." The next morning, they worked side by side, poring over documents, invoices, and ledgers. Amarachi's attention to detail amazed Uche. She caught errors he had overlooked, proposed solutions he hadn't considered, and offered ideas for improvement that made him see her in a completely new light. Through the long hours, exhaustion settled into their muscles, but neither complained. They shared brief smiles, soft touches, and quiet moments of laughter in between tense discussions. By the end of the week, they were ready for the inspection, confident that honesty and hard work would protect the company. The inspector arrived early Monday morning, a stern woman with sharp eyes. She examined the books, questioned employees, and scrutinized shipments. Uche and Amarachi stood side by side, their presence steadying the office staff. Hours passed, and tension built, until finally the inspector put down her clipboard and looked at them both. "Everything seems in order," she said. "This company is compliant with all regulations. Well done." Relief flooded the room. Uche exhaled loudly, feeling the weight of worry lift from his shoulders. Amarachi smiled, a quiet pride in her eyes. "We did it," she said softly. "Yes," he said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Together." That night, they sat on the mansion's veranda, the air warm and fragrant with night blooms. For the first time in weeks, they allowed themselves to simply be. The world felt large and full of challenges, but in that moment, nothing mattered but the bond they had forged. Uche looked at her, his eyes reflecting both exhaustion and awe. "I never imagined my life would turn out like this," he admitted. "Neither did I," Amarachi replied. "I never imagined I'd find love in a lie, or that it would become real." He smiled softly. "You taught me something important. That love isn't about perfection. It's about persistence, care, and courage." Amarachi leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "And you taught me to trust again," she whispered. They stayed like that until the stars began to fade, holding on to each other, knowing that life would continue to test them, but also certain that together, they could face anything. Little did they know, the next test of their love would not come from business troubles, rumors, or ex-lovers. It would come from a challenge even deeper, one that would demand not just trust and care, but the very essence of their hearts. The morning after the late night on the veranda, Amarachi woke to the faint sounds of the city stirring, motorcycles humming, women calling out their wares, the occasional bark of a dog. She stretched and glanced over at Uche, who was still asleep, his face calm and untroubled in a way she had only begun to notice in these past months. Her heart ached with a quiet warmth. He had changed since the day she returned. He was no longer the man hiding behind pride and wealth, but one who carried her heart as carefully as his own. She left the bed quietly, slipping into a wrapper and heading to the kitchen to make breakfast. As she cooked, her mind wandered through memories of how far they had come, from a roadside meeting to pretending as a wife, to leaving and returning, to building a life together that was slowly becoming real in every detail. Every struggle they had faced, every insult, every rumor, every test, had strengthened the connection between them. She realized that the real miracle wasn't the wealth, the home, or the company, it was Uche and the love they were finally building together. When Uche eventually came down, rubbing his eyes, he smiled at her, a smile that made her knees weak despite herself. "You're up early," he said. "I wanted to make breakfast before the day gets busy," she replied. "You've had long days, and you need to eat something before work." He shook his head, looking at her with admiration. "You're incredible. You've changed everything, not just this house, but me. I can't believe I waited this long to see it." They ate in silence, not because of tension, but because silence between them had become a comfort. After breakfast, Uche received a call from a client in Lagos. The conversation was tense, a shipment had been delayed, and there was potential loss. Amarachi watched him, noting the way his shoulders tensed, the careful calm in his voice masking urgency and stress. When he hung up, he rubbed his temples and sighed. "I need to go sort this out," he said. "It could take the whole day." "I'll manage here," she said, smiling softly. "Don't worry about me." But she did worry. While Uche handled the business with precision, Amarachi had grown accustomed to being his anchor in the quiet moments, his reminder of why life mattered beyond profit and success. Without her presence, she knew he would be weighed down by the stress, and it hurt her to think of him carrying burdens alone. As the day wore on, the city grew hotter, the streets dusty and loud. Amarachi spent her time at her stall, preparing meals, speaking to neighbors, and helping women who had recently joined her business. She had become more than just a cook or a seller, she had become a symbol of resilience, hope, and dignity in the market. People respected her, not just for her food, but for the way she treated others. She laughed with them, shared their concerns, and quietly supported those who were struggling. By the late afternoon, a group of men came to the stall, not for food but for confrontation. They were rough-looking, their voices loud and demanding. They accused Amarachi of cutting into their profits, of taking customers who belonged to them. She held her ground, refusing to be intimidated. "You have no right to scare people away," she said firmly, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the lid on a pot of stew. "I work hard for every naira I make. I won't be bullied by anyone." One of the men stepped forward aggressively, but before he could say more, a voice rang out. "Leave her alone." It was Uche. He had returned early, having resolved the shipment issues faster than expected. He moved toward them with a calm but commanding presence that made the men hesitate. "I said, leave her alone," he repeated, more forceful this time. The men looked at each other, then at him, and after a tense moment, they muttered something under their breath and left. Amarachi stood frozen for a moment, relief flooding through her. "You didn't have to come," she whispered. "I did," Uche said, smiling faintly. "You're not alone anymore. I won't let anyone threaten what we've built together." That evening, as they returned home, Amarachi felt the weight of the day settle into her bones, but it was a good kind of exhaustion, the kind that came from standing up, fighting for oneself, and knowing you had someone beside you who would always stand with you. They walked into the mansion together, hand in hand, and found Madame Ego waiting in the living room. Her eyes were sharper than usual, but there was a new softness there as well. "I heard what happened at the market," she said, her voice controlled. You handled it well, Amarachi. And Uche, it's clear that you've chosen the right partner. She doesn't just inspire people, she protects what matters, and so do you. Amarachi smiled, a sense of pride washing over her. Thank you, Ma. Your words mean a lot. Madam Ego nodded. But remember, life will test you both. Strength comes not just from love, but from facing challenges together. Never forget that. Days turned into weeks, and life seemed to settle into a rhythm of trust, care, and shared responsibility. Amarachi's business flourished. She trained more women, expanded her offerings, and even began delivering meals to offices in nearby towns. Uche's company also thrived, the inspection behind them now nothing more than a distant memory. But beyond the work and the success, the true growth was in their love, the slow, deliberate, painstaking work of understanding each other, of being present for one another, of proving that the heart could heal and grow stronger after betrayal. One quiet evening, they sat together on the veranda, the air thick with the scent of evening rain and earth. Uche reached over and held Amarachi's hand, his fingers entwining with hers. Amarachi, he said softly, I want to tell you something I should have said from the very beginning, before all the lies, before the pretense. I didn't just fall for you because of your beauty or your humility. I fell for your heart. Every choice you've made, every hardship you've faced, every kindness you've shown, it made me realize I want to spend my life making sure you never have to carry the world alone again. Amarachi felt tears prick her eyes, but she held back, focusing on the weight of his words and the sincerity in them. Uche, I've seen that heart, she said quietly. I've seen it in your patience, your courage, and your care. And I've realized something too, I love you, not because of what we've been through, but because of what we can become together. He pulled her close, their foreheads touching, the night settling around them like a protective blanket. For a long while, they simply held each other, no words needed, no promises made aloud, just the steady, unshakable presence of two hearts finally aligned. But life, as it always does, had one final lesson waiting. The small food business Amarachi had built began receiving unexpected attention not just from local customers, but from investors who saw potential in scaling her meals across towns. With that opportunity came new pressures, new challenges, and a choice that could alter their lives dramatically. Uche recognized the fear in her eyes when she mentioned the investor. I'll support you, Amarachi, he said, holding her hands tightly. Whatever decision you make, we face it together. This is not just your fight, it's ours. Amarachi looked at him, the warmth of trust and love flooding through her. She realized that the difference between then and now was not wealth, status, or convenience, it was the shared commitment, the understanding that they were partners in every sense of the word. In that moment, standing together on the veranda, rain faintly beginning to fall again, Amarachi knew she had finally found a love worth every risk, every tear, every uncertainty. And Uche knew that the woman beside him, once a girl selling corn by the roadside, was now the heart of his life, his family, and his future. The rain began to fall steadily, washing over them, and they laughed quietly, holding each other, knowing that no matter what the world threw at them, challenges, jealousy, or misfortune, they would face it not as a man and a woman, but as two souls who had chosen each other completely. It had begun as a lie, a pretense, a payment to fill a gap. But it ended as truth, as love, as a life built not on wealth, not on appearances, but on trust, courage, and hearts willing to forgive, to hope, and to stay. And in that embrace, under the gentle patter of rain, Uche whispered, I may have begged for your love once, Amarachi, but now I'll spend every day proving that you'll never have to beg for mine. Amarachi smiled, pressing her forehead to his. And I'll spend every day choosing to stay, she replied. The night carried on, quiet but full, carrying with it a love that had endured tests, storms, and shadows. And in that enduring love, they found something rare and unstoppable, a story not of wealth, or lies, or status, but of two hearts finally learning the true meaning of home, trust, and unshakable devotion. And that brings us to the end of this unforgettable story. He paid a poor girl to pretend as his wife, but ended up begging for her love. A story that began with pride and pretense, but ended in forgiveness, growth, and a love that money could never buy. Amarachi and Uche taught us that sometimes, the heart finds its truth in the most unexpected places, and that no matter how broken a beginning is, it can still lead to something beautiful. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful tales like this one. Tell us which country you're watching from, and what time it is where you are right now. We'd love to know where our amazing viewers are tuning in from. See you in the next story, and remember, true love doesn't need perfection, it just needs two hearts willing to stay.